All right, guys, so we are learning place value with our decimals. So if you look here, I have our place values that we are used to with whole numbers, which is ones, tens, hundreds, and thousands. But we actually have numbers that are smaller or parts of a whole number. So everything from ones over to the left are whole numbers. If we have something that is part of a whole, we have decimals. So we have a decimal point here that separates my whole numbers from my decimals. So this first part here, so let's talk about a whole. So I'm going to pretend that this rectangle is one whole. So I'm thinking of it as like one whole pizza, one whole candy bar. So this here is my whole. So if I were to take this whole and cut that whole into 10 equal parts, these would be known as my tenths. So each bar is a tenth of a whole. So these will be my tenths. Here are my tenths. Okay, let's look back at our whole. If we have this whole here and I were to take these tenths and cut the tenths into 10 pieces, wow, look at that. So there are 100 pieces inside of this whole. We would call these hundredths. So my hundredths place is next to my tenths. It goes tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Ooh, so think about if I had my hundreds and I made each one of these little boxes into 10 pieces, if I cut them into that. So look here. I have cut each of these boxes into 10 pieces. So now I have 1,000 little pieces. So these will be known as my thousandths. So let's go back to our whole. So we started with a whole piece. It's like a whole candy bar or a whole pizza. But when I start cutting this into pieces, in fourth and third grade, we talked about fractions. Fractions can be equivalent to some decimals. So if I were to take my whole piece and cut it into 10 equal pieces, these would be known as tenths. This right here are my tenths. If I were then to take those tenths and cut each of those tenths into 10 pieces, those would be known as my hundredths. So this is my hundredths place. If I were to take each of those little dinky hundredths places and cut it into 10 pieces, I then would have 1,000 pieces, which are my thousandths. So that's a good visual for you guys to see the difference between a whole, tenths, hundredths, and thousand.